This final clip of our class on Franz Rosenzweig looks at his essay Towards a Renaissance of Jewish Learning. This article sets out the rationale for a new kind of Jewish education and is the basis for the establishment of the Free Lehrhaus, the educational project for which Rosenzweig is most famous. A place to start is from the words he wrote to his cousin Rudolf Ehrenberg in a letter which we have already quoted, where he explains his decision to go back on his resolution to be baptized. No one can reach the Father, but the situation is quite different from one who does not have to reach the Father because he is already with him. And this is true of the people of Israel, though not individual Jews. Rosenzweig says that the people of Israel is already with the Father, but he qualifies this with the words, though not individual Jews. To be Jewish is to be part of the chosen people, a people chosen to be the recipients of a particular revelation, which is then the inheritance of anyone born Jewish or who chooses to join the Jewish people. Rosenzweig did not think that Judaism has a monopoly on religious truth and revelation, but that Jews had a distinct access to the truth. This access requires being part of the Jewish people, but the accident of Jewish birth alone is insufficient. One has to realize this by actually being a Jew. In the past, this was quite simple and natural. The Jew was raised in a Jewish family, lived in a Jewish community, imbibed Jewish learning, and practiced the life of the commandments. The modern, acculturated Jew, like Rosenzweig himself, had none of these things. The only means of restoring the Jewish being of such Jews is education. But what kind of adult education has a chance of returning these Jews to their Jewishness? This is the subject of Rosenzweig's essay. Today, it is most common to think of returning to Judaism as a kind of radical conversion or reversion in which the individual transforms their lifestyle to take on the life of orthodoxy with all its trappings. In practice, over time, this is what happened in Rosenzweig's own life, without him ever calling himself orthodox. It is important to see, however, that this is not what he requires of others. To be Jewish is something which one needs to be with all one's being, but this does not require turning away from everything the modern Jew has become. What is needed is to restore a sense of Jewish wholeness, a wholeness which traditional Jews once possessed. Here we should take note of Rosenzweig's critique of Zionism. Zionism, diagnostician of genius but most mediocre healer, has recognized the disease but prescribed the wrong treatment. Zionism correctly understands that modern Jewish identity has become fractured. Judaism has become a set of empty rites of passage and at best a shallow education whose aim is to prepare people to participate in those rites. Where Zionism is completely in error, according to Rosenzweig, is to solve the problem by turning Jewishness into a national identity, no different from being French, German, or Italian. This is a narrowing of the significance of Judaism and a failure to realize the significance for the world of Jews and Judaism. Rosenzweig vehemently asserts that he does not mean what he calls a cracked record, that is, to define Judaism as a creed or religion, as liberal Judaism had done. Rosenzweig is particularly averse to the term religion. What then is it to be Jewish? To this he gives an apparently vague answer. It is only lived, and perhaps not even that. One is it. Or a little earlier in the essay, one is a Jüdisch Kind, a Jewish child, with every breath. It courses through the arteries of our life, strongly or weakly, but at any rate to our very fingertips. All that is required is an existential decision that one's Jewishness is the core of one's being, and that all that this Jew encounters, they encounter as a Jew. Rosenzweig seeks to create a space and a time in which these alienated, acculturated Jews will discover this will to be Jewish within them. Readiness is the one thing we can offer to the Jewish individual within us, the individual we aim at. Only the first gentle push of the will, and will is almost too strong a word, that first quite gentle push we give ourselves when in the confusion of the world we once quietly say, "We Jews," and by that expression commit ourselves for the first time to the eternal pledge that, according to an old saying, makes every Jew responsible for every other Jew. Nothing more is assumed than the simple resolve to say once, "Nothing Jewish is alien to me." And this in itself is hardly a resolve, scarcely anything more than a small impulse to look around oneself and into oneself. What each will then see, no one can venture to predict. This moment of inner resolution cannot be planned or be programmed for. The Lehrhaus is a place of encounter and dialogue, and not a curriculum. It is not a matter of attending a course of public lectures by an expert and charismatic lecturer. It is not a matter of studying with learned rabbis or academic experts on Judaism. What is important is what is said at the end of the quotation we just cited. What each will then see, no one can venture to predict. This is an open-ended process. The crucial step is to join it. At many points, Rosenzweig emphasizes the present moment. The books are not important in themselves. Rosenzweig ends with a quotation from Ecclesiastes, "Of the making of books there is no end." Textual scholarship for its own sake will not answer to the needs of the moment, how to be a Jew in the here and now. This does not mean that the texts do not have a central role, but that role is in the living process of learning, which takes from the literature we inherit from the past to inform the present moment as a moment of being Jewish. The Lehrhaus will require more listening than teaching, and this requires a special kind of teacher. And in the same discussion hour, the same person may be heard as both master and student. In fact, only when this happens will it be certain that a person is qualified to teach. This is why the usual expert rabbinic or academic teacher will find it difficult to teach in the Lehrhaus, because they are not used to learning and teaching in this kind of dialogical exchange. The voices of those who want these desirous students to desire them as teachers must lose the true ring of dead sure conviction. Rosenzweig ends his essay by admitting that many will find his non-program too vague and undefined. He suggests they stay away and remain with the definite with which they feel comfortable. But he ends by addressing those open to try. But perhaps here and there someone will say longingly, "How beautiful," and think hesitantly, if such a thing only existed. I grant the doubts of such as these. Let them doubt, but let them come. Let them find out whether such a thing exists. It depends on them, and only on them, whether it does exist. It depends on their power to wish, their urge to question, their courage to doubt. Among them are the students and the masters. Let them come. Every forum for Jewish learning today that comes under the heading of Jewish renewal, every opportunity for Jewish learning at a Limud conference or in open Batei Midrash in Israel or the diaspora, whether consciously or unconsciously, these are the children and grandchildren of Rosenzweig's vision for the open Lehrhaus he established in 1920 in Frankfurt am Main.